Okay, I'd like to thank everybody for coming to the May Planning Board meeting for the town of Surf City, North Carolina. As you know, we are hosting these via Zoom. So we're going to try a few rules of etiquette to help our Zoom meeting go a little bit better. I'm going to keep the agenda up on the shared screen unless we are looking at specific parts of the agenda. Otherwise, it will stay up. We're going to start by doing a roll call. And then once the roll has been called, I will hand it over to Chairman Bartholomew to start the meeting. And then also when you speak, please identify yourself before speaking. So for the roll call, Mr. Bartholomew, are you here? Mr. Bartholomew, can you please say here?
I did. I'm
okay.
Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Mr. Pasquantonio?
Here.
Mr. Campbell is not here. Mr. Benton?
Here.
Miss Edens?
Present.
Mr. Cox?
I'm here.
Miss Rhodes?
Here.
Mr. Kavanaugh?
Oh, I'm here.
Thank you, Mr. Kavanaugh. Mr. Ward?
Here on the phone.
And then, so these will be our voting members. And Mr. Arthur, are you present as well?
I'm here.
All right, thank you, members of the board, for taking time today to be with us. And Mr. Bartholomew, I'm going to turn it over to you at this time.
Coming in this afternoon. Welcome to the kindergarten class of Zoom technology. If you have not had a few minutes to take a look at the minutes from last month's meeting, please do so.
I vote to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion to approve the minutes. A second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes have been approved. Item 3 on the agenda is the plat approval for an extension for the terraces. I'll yield to Amy to introduce that to us.
Okay. In your packet today is a request to extend the preliminary plat approval associated with the terraces. The terraces is a subdivision located between Dogwood Lakes and the Lowe's Harris Teeter area. Appendix B of the subdivision regulations of our ordinance, Article 5, states that the procedure for review and approval of subdivision plats, 10 final plat paragraphs number 4 states, the final plat shall be submitted not more than 12 months after the date on which the preliminary plat was approved, unless a written extension of this time limit has been granted by the planning board prior to expiration of the 1-year anniversary of approval. The preliminary plat for this project was approved by Town Council on January 2nd, 2018. The 1-year date for approval would have occurred on January 2nd, 2019. The project has been delayed while working with the Army Corps of Engineers to obtain wetland permits. In the summer-fall timeframe of 2019, the applicant presented plan changes associated with the permitting process to the TRC for review. The overall project has remained the same, with changes to the access point, and roadways to limit environmental impacts. Below you will find the original summary with modifications based on the revised site plan. TRC review was completed for these revisions. For your use today, we have a copy of the landscape plan from the original approval. That was what I was able to easily put my hands on. And then we also have the plan revisions. So just as a summary of this project, just to kind of bring everybody up to speed in case you weren't here back on December 8th of 2017. The owner of this project is Highway 17 Holdings. I'm trying to scroll down so the people at home can see this. Paramount Engineering is the engineer on this project. The total acreage is 40.56 acres. The project name is The Terraces, and it will be 76 single-family homes. It is currently zoned multifamily cluster with a conditional use permit. As stated earlier, it's between the Lowe's Home Improvements, Dogwood Lakes, and the Arbors. It will have a state stormwater permit. The original plan had 2.2 acres of upland and 19.08 acres of wetlands for open space. The conditional uses that were originally assigned to this only allow for single-family homes. They provide pedestrian connection to Lowe's, and then they were to provide water connection to the Arbors, Dogwood Lakes, Lowe's Home Improvements, and stub out to the property line towards US 17 for future connectivity. They were also to add a dense buffer between the road and the homes in Dogwood Lakes as determined by staff, and to do the same for the property adjacent to the Lowe's and Lot 31 as determined by staff. Planning Board approved the original preliminary plat on December 14th of 2017 at their Planning Board meeting. Through the Army Corps of Engineer wetland permitting process, changes were made to the site plan. These changes have been presented to TRC, and they include the addition of Portico Court, the connection to Trellis Road to provide connectivity to the adjacent property, and the removal of the connection of Rosedale Drive to the adjacent property. If Planning Board would like to move forward with reinstating the approval of this site, we ask that a note be added that streets will be constructed according to NCDOT standards as well as the Town of Surf City standards. The current cross-section notes that a geotechnical report was not provided. We just ask that once that's determined, we ensure that the cross-section meets or exceeds the Town of Surf City standard typical section. We ask that a note stating all sidewalks will be a minimum of 4 inches thick with the driveway areas being 6 inches thick be added. And then there was an additional conversation that the radius in the cul-de-sac may not quite meet fire. So just that be addressed as a part of the next step prior to the final plan acceptance. So it's my understanding, and Mr. Price is here, but it is my understanding that the sewer and water plans have been reviewed and agreed upon.
That is correct. Yes, ma'am.
And then the current setbacks for MFC as it reads in the ordinance now is a front yard of 25 feet, a rear yard of 20, a side yard of 10, and a side street yard of 10 foot. The site shows a side setback of 5 foot, which matches item H of MFC, which is a requirement that requires a minimum building separation of 10 foot. So staff has reviewed the project with the exception of the notes that we've requested above. The radiuses in the cul-de-sacs be corrected. The only concern that we have is the 5 foot setback on the side yards. We will be talking about a possible revision to MFC later today, but as it stands right now, it does have a 10 foot side yard. Mr. Poindexter and staff, some of his staff is here. If you have direct design questions or questions maybe back to 2017, since I was not here at that time. And
Amy,
can I ask a question?
note.
Ms. Edens, I think I heard you first.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Ward.
Well, they've got in the conditional use conditions, item 5 is lot 31. I believe it should now read lot 27.
Okay.
All right. So, Amy, is my okay. As my understanding is they just want to renew what was already approved in 18, with the exception of the radius of the cul-de-sac for the fire department.
Yep, and just we asked that they add a couple comments. So the way that our ordinance reads, you're supposed to do it within a year if you can't have final plat recorded. So Mr. Poindexter is still working towards finalizing everything, and I don't know that everything is 100% written in stone. Like, for instance, the cul-de-sacs. I know him and our fire marshal had a conversation yesterday, and Mr. Poindexter is amenable to making those changes and bringing it into code. It doesn't seem to be an issue. This is more of a paperwork trail, so that when he is ready to move forward, we would have an active set of plans to move forward with.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make a motion that we accept the proposal as is, with the exception of the fire truck radius, that be addressed.
I'll second it.
Okay, we've got a motion to accept it with the extra conditions that have been put forth by the planning department. And we have a second. Barring any further conversation, all in favor, say aye.
I have a question before we vote.
Okay, Rick?
This question for Amy. Do we have a requirement that a developer puts up a performance bond once a preliminary plan is moved until they install all the improvements? I mean, was that done in this case, or do we not have that requirement?
So what we do with the bond is when they go to do the final plat recordation, if any improvement is not installed, they will bond it at that time. So right now they would not bond for the work. They haven't started work yet, so they wouldn't bond for anything. When they're ready to record the initial, the final plot to start building houses, what we did with Waterside was allow them to bond everything that had not been completed, which was some sewer work, water, storm drain, all of that. With Magnolia Reserve, we have allowed them to bond the street trees and the sidewalk, things that could easily be damaged during construction. But all the sewer, water, curb and gutter, all of those amenities had to be in prior to recordation of the final plat.
And so in this case, we don't need to act on the performance bond.
Correct.
Amy, I just want to make sure that the way the motion is presented, that if we approve it, that it covers the suggestions that the town has made and added.
I believe that's the way I stated it.
Yes, you did. And that's the way it was
Okay.
Presented.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All right, we have the motion. We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried.
Mr. Poindexter, before you hop off, I will provide a written extension from the planning board and ask, as soon as I can get with Mr. Bartholomew, I will ask that he sign it so that we can provide that. And this will extend your approval for 1 year.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, everybody. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you.
Good.
I believe you didn't tell me to do it. can't believe he was going to do it.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the site plan approval for Triton Village 2.
Amy, it's Randy. Just as a reminder, I have to be recused on this.
All right, so I guess Mr. Arthur, since you're here and Mr. Cox cannot vote, and I thank you, Mr. Cox, for letting us know, you will be allowed to vote on this one.
Okay.
Do we need to take action to recuse Randy as a board?
Do what?
Do we need to take action to recuse you? You can't recuse yourself.
To officially
We need to take a
recuse.
vote on that.
I don't know.
I've recused myself before.
Doesn't it just have to be noted in the minutes?
I feel like we're supposed to vote on it.
I think
Yeah.
it's.
So-
I'll make that motion to that effect that
Vote.
Mr. Cox be recused from this item.
Okay, we have a motion to recuse Randy,
Make a second.
and we have a second. Barring any further discussion, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? So the motion's carried. Randy's recused.
I have two separate computers going on today, so I'm trying to get my, get this up for you. So I'm going to try to let everyone at home follow along on the screen while I start reading through this. Your packet today is a request for site plan approval of Triton Village 2. This project began TRC review in August of 2019. The initial review was for the entire tract of land containing a development similar to the existing Triton Village project. During the review process, the developer decided to only develop the two buildings located on the front portion of the project, while leaving the back to be developed at a later time. The site plan before you is for the front two buildings and associated parking and utilities only. Please see the below project information. The owner is Wellman Commercial. Intercoastal Engineering is the engineer on the plans. The total site acreage is 4.5 acres. The before you is 17,400 square feet of retail, commercial, office space type use, similar to Triton Village. This is in the C3 Extended Entranceway Commercial District, which allows for those uses. It is adjacent to NC 5210, located between the existing Triton Village and Charlie Medlin Drive. It will have a state stormwater permit for stormwater. The revised site plan was submitted in response to comments sent from Mike Dixon as a combined Town of Surf City response. The comments have been addressed by this submittal and is approved by TRC. The site will provide pedestrian access by providing a sidewalk in the Charlie Medlin Drive right-of-way. The Town of Surf City Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan shows a multi-use path on the opposite side of Charlie Medlin Drive with sidewalk on the adjacent side. The project will provide access to existing Triton Village development as well. Staff recommends approval of this, and I will pull up the site plan real quick, hopefully. Can everyone see the site plan?
Yes.
Yes.
So I do want to note that the existing Triton Village will have the interconnectivity at both of these parking lots to allow for easy flow in between. The sewer and water and fire are all satisfied with this set of plans. There are no roadway improvements associated with it. If y'all have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or Mr. Wellman is on the line or on the Zoom meeting as well.
Amy, I got one question I just don't understand.
Yes, sir.
The parking requirement says minimum and a maximum of 77 spaces, and he's showing 93 spaces. I don't understand why we have a maximum anyway. What does that mean?
We do have a maximum requirement in there. There was a time when development seemed, was paving the world. So in an effort to decrease the amount of non-used parking spaces, municipalities came up with maximums. In this case, we are looking at it exceeding the maximum because we're looking at this as an extension of Triton Village, since it is the same developer, same landowner, and due to the interconnectivity, the existing Triton Village is very close on meeting parking requirements, meeting minimum parking requirements. The hope is that if this exceeds the maximum slightly, some of the overflow from the two commercial buildings that you see on the site plan would be able to overflow into this commercial parking versus parking on the street or in the subdivision.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. Okay. The maximum is still in effect, though? Technically,
yes.
is a requirement?
Yes, sir. There is a maximum. There is a maximum in the ordinance.
So this is really supplementing an original Triton Village commercial.
Yes, sir. What it does is allow for a little bit of overflow. And to count parking on an additional piece of property, you need to be within 600 feet, which these spaces would meet. And with it being the same landowner, he doesn't have to, get an agreement with himself that he'll share parking.
Okay.
What's the pleasure of the board on this?
I would make a motion that we accept the proposal as is.
Okay,
I'll second that.
We have a motion to approve the proposal, and we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of approval of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion's carried.
Hey, this is Dwight. I'm sorry. I meant to chime in just prior to that. Not that it's going to change the vote, but the question in regards to the maximum space for parking. So are they going to be restricted to that maximum number, or are you going to allow the 90-something spaces that were presented?
They will be allowed the spaces that were presented due to the interconnectivity with the adjacent site.
Okay.
If they didn't interconnect, they would not be able. They would have to stop at the maximum. But those spaces will be used by the Triton Village existing.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, it's time to move to item 5, the text amendment request of multifamily cluster. I'll let Amy bring us up to date on that.
In your packet today is a request for a text amendment to the language associated with the multifamily cluster zoning. Multifamily cluster zoning can be found in section 4.1.8 of Appendix A of the Town of Surf City Ordinances. This zoning was adopted on October 4th, 2016, and has been applied to 5 different areas within the town. This zoning requires 30% of the overall tract to remain as open space, limits the ability to clear cut, and requires foundation plantings for all buildings, as well as providing sidewalk connections from all homes to the public sidewalk. In 2016, the Waterside Development rezoned phases 1 and 2 from PUD, which the entire tract had originally been zoned, to MFC. The understanding of the intent of MFC supported the developer's desire to reduce infrastructure and preserve wetlands. The overall understanding at the time indicated that the setbacks provided in the language were for the larger tract and would not be applied to lots if they were subdivided. The approved preliminary and final plats plans show a front setback of 10 feet with side and rear setbacks of 5 feet. When reading through the text itself, it does not support this, in my opinion. Section 4.1.8, item 3, dimensional requirements, D through G, require a lot width of 50 foot, a front yard of 25 feet, a side yard of 10 feet, and a rear yard of 20 feet. While item H does state all setbacks from principal structures come from the larger parcel of property lines and not from individual structures or units. The minimum setback between structures is 10 feet. This is in relation to structures units such as townhomes and not individual single-family lots. In an effort to continue with the project as originally designated by designed by the development team, Cape Fear Engineering, on behalf of SF10 LLC, is requesting a text amendment change as noted in the attached revised text. This will reduce the required setbacks to a front yard of 15, a rear yard of 10, a side yard of 5, a corner yard of 10, and then a lot size minimum of 4,500 square feet, and a lot width minimum of 40 feet. The Town of Surf City Land Use Plan denotes this area as Mainland Residential Transition. I do want to note, in 2005, this was not a part of the town, but was a part of a part that we wanted to grow into the town. So on page 137 of that document, which is under Part 2, Plan for the Future, Section 3, Future Land Use Map and Map Classification Categories, the future land use system, Mainland Transition Residential states, multifamily development and single-family homes are anticipated to occupy the land classified as Mainland Transition. Lot sizes will vary from 5,000 square feet or less according to the local requirements for multifamily developments to 10,000 square feet for single-family homes. The existing land use plan does not support the request for lot sizes smaller than 5,000, which is their existing R5 designation. Below you will see attached the amended text and a narrative provided by the applicant. So I think a little bit of the complication with this is the 2005 land use plan. We did not have multifamily cluster at that time. The intent of multifamily cluster is to reduce lot size and separation so that you can require additional open space. We do have 30% open space on that particular site plan, but I'm trying to scroll down. So here's kind of on your screen now is the requested text revision. The applicant has provided some information for you to read through. I don't know if they would like to speak, but they are the engineering firm. Michael House is here representing the engineering firm, and Ian and Patrick are here from D.R. Horton if you have any questions for them.
Amy?
So yes.
So what you're saying is they want to change the setbacks.
Yes, ma'am. So our current smallest setbacks are in our R5, and they have a front yard
of 5,000 square foot lot, right?
Yes, ma'am. 5,000 square foot yard, 50 foot minimum width, 7.5 foot side yard, 15 foot front, and a 20 foot backyard.
And they want to change it to what? I mean, you said a lot in a short period of time right then.
Yes, ma'am. The front yard minimum would be 15 feet. The side yard would be 5 feet. The rear yard would be 10. The lot size minimum would be 4,500 square feet, and the lot width would be 40.
Ouch.
Yeah.
I got a small comment to make and a thought for the group. It's Dwight here, Dwight Torres. When you say side yard minimum, 5 feet, that means 10 feet between two buildings, just to be clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, so my concern.
Dwight,
Yes.
on top of that, if you go down another item or two, you got that 2 foot setback allowed, which only makes 3 feet side yard
Yeah, so
between
You're talking
property line and house.
You're talking about the pop outs and the steps for the
Yes.
utility.
Exactly.
yeah, so
No,
Ouch.
not for utility. You just allowed a 2 foot by 12 foot pop out.
I know,
so
but then
here's-
you also have the steps. The steps can encroach too, can't they?
Sure.
Yeah, so for the group, my concern is with what we had happen over on next door to me with the large fire, and the setbacks between those two buildings was much greater than what's being proposed here. And we saw what happened to those structures in a matter of 1 hour with the right conditions. To put these things that close, it's just kind of more danger, I think. I'm not sure, but it's just something for you guys to think about.
The setbacks apply to the property lines, not to the buildings. Isn't that correct?
So, I
Right,
think
so that would be 10 feet between buildings, and that's pretty close, because the setbacks between these residential homes was much greater than that, and it did what it did. So it's just a food for thought.
Well, the residential homes are 15 apart, and the setbacks were 7.5 on the sides. But then you've got the 2 foot pop outs that you can do, and then you've got your steps into the building can encroach up to half of what your setback is. So they could wound up being like, 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
Am I correct in that, Amy?
yes, ma'am. With the you are allowed a 2 by 12 encroachment, pop out, whatever term you want to use. And if each house did that, you would have 3 foot on each side of the property, which would be
Exactly.
6 foot.
You don't have a lot of vegetation showing in a lot when you chop it down to 4,500 square feet too, in a 40-foot width. You could have a 30, according to what they've got here, you could have a 30-foot wide house with 2 foot pop outs on each side on a 40-foot lot.
What's our alternative, Amy?
Crowded.
You can leave it as is with the dimensions that are shown just above that. Can everyone see this on their screen?
Yes.
That has a screen. I know
Yeah.
some people don't. But items C through G would be what is their existing, and then this down here in red would be what they're requesting. So we could either modify their text. We can either leave it as is and say, nope, we don't want to change anything. We can modify their text to something in between the two, or we can move forward with their text. I think those are our 3 options.
I'd like to make a motion.
Well, I'll make a motion that we don't change anything.
I would say that. I second it.
Can I just make one clarification thing? This is Dave Ward. This applies only to when it's developed as single-family lots and not as townhomes or patio homes or something like that. Is that
Yes, sir.
correct?
This is the way that they have it stated in their revision is if the property is to be subdivided into individual single-family lots, setbacks for principal structures would be as follows. So if you have a piece of property that that townhomes were built on, and it stayed, an overall piece of property owned by the homeowners association, the requirement would be you would follow item H, which would require the 10-foot setback between structures on that parent property, and then follow the setbacks above that for the parent property for those buildings located within that larger tract of land.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Amy, I wanted to. Could we have could we have Cape Fear kind of run through how we ended up where we're at and how we have the 5-foot side setbacks on the recorded plat and the 10-foot or the 10-foot in the front? Is that something we can talk through really quick?
Yeah,
Don't we have a motion in a second?
We're still having further
Have
discussion.
discussion.
Okay, all right.
I think we should at least listen to what they're proposing.
Okay, that's good.
So the 5-foot setbacks, really all these setbacks, what we're trying to do is just clarify within the ordinance that if you subdivide to single family use within a multifamily cluster overall parcel, right now it's set up where the minimum lot size for a multifamily cluster development would be 2 acres. And that's obviously not the intent of the ordinance, and that was kind of where we got to thinking some clarification would be needed if we are to subdivide into single family parcels. That was kind of the whole driving factor between proposing a text amendment, was just to provide some of that additional clarification. In regards to the front yard, we didn't pick these out of nowhere. The front yard, we were just trying to match the R5 zoning. The rear yard, we reduced slightly, and the side yards, we reduced slightly along with the minimum lot size, just to be consistent with the intent that multifamily cluster is supposed to reduce the overall footprint of the development compared to an R5. And in our mind, that would mean slightly reducing the lot sizes, slightly reducing the setbacks to allow for that clustering intent. The 5-foot side setback is not uncommon. It meets all fire code requirements, and there's also several ordinances kind of around the area that support that. City of Wilmington, New Hanover County, Brunswick County, Town of Leland all have approved 5-foot side setbacks within residential zoning. So just something to consider as we talk through this.
And Michael, were those setbacks approved prior to the, like, on all preliminary plats and everything, or how do we end up with those on there?
They were. So when we submitted for the preliminary plat back under the previous administration, it was their understanding that the setbacks listed in the multifamily cluster only applied to the overall parent parcel boundary. With that guidance from the previous administration, we determined some other setbacks that would be beneficial for the use of single family for this subdivision. And those were listed on the preliminary plat that was approved and the final plat that was approved for phase 1 of the subdivision. So that is a recorded map with those setbacks as of now. And we're just trying to clarify the ordinance to avoid any discrepancies moving forward.
I think one thing to note too, when this started out going towards MFC, original ideas of this had alleys in the back so that parking was not in the front yard. So when the concept was original, it was a slightly different concept, and as it modified, I don't think the setbacks were truly addressed again as the product changed to mirror more of an R5 type home.
I thought when we did the multifamily cluster, we weren't doing single family homes. It was more for townhomes or patio homes or connected structures. So
I was not here obviously in 2017, and I just looked at Steve over my shoulder, and he was not a part of that as well. So hopefully some of y'all on the planning board remember those conversations and the intent of this.
I thought that was the intent, was so you could have townhomes and expand your, push it out to the setbacks, and then so you could have so you could do like patio homes, things that were connected, and save some of the space on and make for green. It wasn't. I don't recall it really being for single family homes. That's why, because if it was single family homes, we already had R5, R15, and that the MFC was for homes that were going to be connected, so you didn't have, so you could expand that and make a little bit more green space in there, and give them the option of pushing it further to the boundaries to make it a little bit more open in the middle.
And Steve, my thoughts on that was that to go to the multifamily versus the PUD, it was less density.
Right. Correct.
So now they're asking to go back to more density.
Correct. That's my understanding, and that's why I don't agree with the changes, because it's not in the spirit of the MFC. Going through. If you're going to do single family homes, there's already R5 and R15 for PUD to choose from on that.
Now, the overall tract density may not increase with this MFC because we are maintaining 30% or more open space, which is the wetland areas and whatnot that are being preserved. So the overall lot density would not be the same as R5 because it does not require open space. That being said, there is a lot of wetland in the area, so that would be permitting and all of that. But MFC does require dedicated open space where R5 does not.
Right.
And the current plan and the current setbacks do allow for 40% open space being provided on the site.
This is Dave Ward. I think we got to look beyond this one project too. What we're doing here is setting the precedent for something to go on in the future. And I agree with
That's my
Steve
point,
that,
David.
This whole thing should not even have single family lot development in this this zoning use. Is counterintuitive.
Yeah.
I think some of the confusion on our side, or the reason why we're really requesting this, is we went through obviously all of the preliminary design. We made it through all of our water, sewer, all of our infrastructure installation. We planned we planned our entire design along, geared towards what was preliminary approved, and then ultimately what was approved on the final plat for phase 1A, where it notes the setbacks of 5 on the side. And I think that our biggest concern is the side setbacks, as it sounds that it is yours as well. And with having our entire design around this and not being able at the time to increase our lot size, now we're a majority of our homes that we design won't fit within that setback when we cut it in half. And I think that due to it being approved and us putting our infrastructure in and us designing around that is the reason why we're really requesting this.
Well, I don't see the cut in half comment. It's from 7.5 to 10. That's not cutting in half. The R5 is 7.5.
Currently so you're saying that from the 5 to the 7.5?
The R5 is 7.5 foot setbacks on the sides.
Right, and I guess
you're not cutting it in half.
Right. Yeah, and we ran our model. So even over I'm saying if we stuck with the current ordinance that shows the 10 foot on the sides, then that would be cutting it in half. If we went through an entire rezoning now, then we'd go to 7.5, and we'd still lose a good chunk of our plans there, even off the 5 feet on the sides. The front setbacks really are not of a huge concern to us. We can work within that. It's the side setbacks that really push our plans out. And I guess it's more the reason why we're really here is because the plats were preliminary approved and approved with those setbacks on it.
Mm-hmm. What about dropping it from 50 feet to 40 feet?
Well, for the minimum lot width required?
Yeah. Why are we doing that?
Again, the concept there was just to stay consistent with reducing infrastructure. So our interpretation of the multifamily cluster was really a little bit smaller lots, a little bit more density in specific areas on the site to allow for more open space, more amenity space, and preservation of natural wetlands and surface waters, so a little more effectively. Mm-hmm. So we felt, a slight reduction from the R5 would meet the intent of a single family use within a multifamily cluster.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, this is Rick. Did you look in the minutes from 2016 when the planning board approved this, and did the board specifically approved the 5-foot setbacks that's on the plat?
I have not found them. So with the amount of turnover, especially with with Patty and Todd having left, I'm not sure where the electronic files for those are. That's certainly something I will continue to research. I'm trying. Jason's going to work with me to help me get access to some old files, but at this time I have not been able to find the older meeting minutes, and at that time we didn't keep them online.
So you don't know that 5-yard setbacks were not permitted at that time in the ordinance?
I don't know the discussion around it during the planning board meeting, no, sir.
Because I don't recall, or I don't think it's normal practice for the planning board to approve setbacks or anything else that's not provided for in the ordinance. Just wondering where the 5-foot approval was coming from.
I think the 5-foot. I think the 5-foot that was shown on the plans comes from the item H that says all setbacks for principal structures come from the larger parcel, and that the minimum setback between structures is 10 feet. So by applying that 5-foot, if you break that down, that's a 5-foot setback on each. That is my understanding of where that came from.
Correct. That's the same thing the terraces just did, was apply a 5-foot setback to create the 10-foot between structures per section H of the multifamily cluster ordinance.
Which was one of the things that was noted that we did not agree with on those plans.
Hey, Amy, this is Garrett Harlan. We think you have that information for us.
I can't hear.
Hey, Amy, Derek Arts, can you hear me now?
A little bit better.
I was just asking, would Cape Fear would have that from 2016 that they can provide us that information?
I don't know. I reached out to Michael House with Cape Fear. We have been chatting back and forth. I don't know that he has the meeting minutes. Michael?
I do. I have them in our file.
Thank you.
I mean, it is something that we can try to dig deeper and find.
Yeah, and Amy, I can provide you a copy of the minutes from the initial meeting where the preliminary plat was approved.
That would be the preliminary plat. Okay, and then I can also look for the meeting minutes from the adoption of this of this actual MFC zoning.
And what about the lot size and the lot width as well?
Can you hear me?
Original subdivision, original plans showing 4,500 square foot lots and 40-foot minimum width?
No, our lots are actually larger than that. We're bigger than the 4,500 and the 40 feet wide.
Okay.
We were just kind of applying logic between the R5 and the MFC to get a slightly smaller product. We just felt that met the intent of the ordinance better. That's certainly not a make or break point for us.
So the conflict is really with the side yard issue.
Correct.
Also, I may not recall correctly, but if I remember right, that there was no single family involved in that. It was all going to be the townhouses, patio homes, that sort of thing.
The preliminary plat has always shown subdivision into single family lots going back to 2017. It was first approved
not at 40 feet. Not at 40 feet.
No, ma'am. When I said the current plan that was approved, we don't have any lots that are 40 feet. We were just trying to reduce the lot size slightly to be consistent with what we felt was the intent of the ordinance. We are 50 foot wide on our lots. So that's not an issue for the current phase 1 design of the Waterside subdivision.
This is Matt Haley with Cape Fear Engineering. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So while Michael just pointed out that, the 50-foot minimum width is not an issue for the currently platted phase 1A, the approval that we have is for 170 lots that makes up phases 1A, 1B, and 2. And those lot sizes were clearly shown on the preliminary plat, and there are some lots within the subdivision I believe are 45 feet wide. So the
single family at 45?
Single family at 45, yes, ma'am. So I guess the issue that we have kind of goes back to what D.R. Horton was stating, is that back in 2016-17 at the project infancy, we coordinated with the staff at Surf City at the time. We're told a particular interpretation of the multifamily cluster ordinance, specifically related to that item H, that's been discussed several times, that states that the setbacks apply to the overall parcel boundary. And then we have spent many thousands of dollars, and D.R. Horton has spent millions of dollars constructing plans based on the approvals that were received and recommendations by staff, planning board, and council. So the effort to get the text amendment is really just to clarify the ordinance language to match what has been shown and approved multiple times over the last 3 years.
Ouch.
And we definitely recognize the concern that, whatever text amendment, would apply to, all future projects. But, we're not at a position where we're looking at a planned project. We've actually got infrastructure in the ground, lot corner set, water and sewer services and a handful of homes under construction based off, an approval that was in hand, that now I guess there's some discussion about how to interpret the order
of the development. I've never seen one.
Gotcha. So I don't know, Amy, would it be helpful? Because it sounds like, we're probably not going to come to an agreement today, that we can maybe provide you with the meeting minutes that we have on file, provide maybe a little bit more detailed timeline, including the previous plat that were approved, maybe highlighting specific notes as it relates to setbacks and lot sizes, and maybe get those distributed so everybody can digest before we get on another call.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful to see, to have those things. And I will also research here and see what I can find on the original conversations of the MFC, of when we adopted MFC, and the meeting minutes from planning board and council for those times as well.
Gotcha. I think
Amy,
we can coordinate with you, Amy, on maybe getting a little presentation, a little timeline together that we can send out in advance and maybe walk through the next time we can all get on the phone together.
And that
Amy, what if I amend my motion that we table this until we get that information that they were just referring to?
Yes, ma'am.
Amy, this
All
is
right,
that's all right. I can ask the question in discussion.
Okay, we have a motion to table this until we are able to obtain more information. Do we have a second?
which is the plot plans and stuff from 2016.
I second it.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to table this item. Any further discussion?
Larry, I have a clarification question. I think it boils down to that the 2016 plat has been approved by the planning board and by city council, and that's in effect. And what we're looking at doing is making these ordinance changes to go from this point forward. I think that's what we're doing, correct? We're not looking at changing what's already been approved. that
That's
correct?
my understanding.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion?
So if that's the case, then it's already been approved, then why is there a hold up on their project? What are they seeking? If it's
Going forward,
Because it's going forward from here.
developing the rest
Well,
of it.
and the town has said that they're not going to issue building permits within phase 1 as it was approved with the 5-foot side setback shown.
Because even if we in errors approved something, it does not mean that you don't have to still meet it.
Okay.
So if we miss something on the plans, like if we didn't look up there and see the 5-foot setback, then it does not give them the ability to not meet, to do something that does not meet the way that the ordinance was written at the time of the approval, would be this way. So we just want to make sure that what we are allowing them to do meets the ordinance.
At the ordinance at the time.
And this ordinance, so this is the way that the ordinance read when they rezoned to MFC, because there has only been the adoption of it and not a modification to it.
When did they rezone to MFC from PUD?
I believe that Todd, conversations with Todd at the time is what led them. The intent of MFC meets what they're doing and bringing the houses closer together. The wording of the ordinance does not necessarily match that intent.
Yeah, so
With
this
less
is Matt with
density.
Cape Fear again. So just some of the background on that question. The project was originally zoned, PUD. The developer at the time wanted to cluster development closer together, reduce the side setback, and through discussions with Todd, he recommended that we rezone it to multifamily cluster because, in his words, the setbacks did not apply to individual structures, and we could basically establish whatever building footprint we wanted, provided it met fire code and had 10 foot between the structures. There was also the things in the multifamily cluster ordinance that Todd really wanted to push, such as the increase of open space from, I believe, 10 or 15% to 30%. It added some additional streetscape, the sidewalks from the residential units connecting to the street sidewalks. I think that in addition to, our desire to cluster the development from the town's perspective, there were some things that were appealing to a multifamily cluster rezone instead of staying with the original PUD.
So the trade-off was getting closer together, and for Todd, it was providing more open space and green space and a better looking use of the land, I guess, for lack of a better word, or to keep more open.
That's correct, and it's better pedestrian connectivity, decorative street lighting, some things of that nature.
Okay. So really on your requirement, it's really just the side yard, so the front, corner, rear, and lot size and width really don't really matter for you. It's really just the side yard minimum requirement that's the issue.
Well, total lot width also.
Thank you, David.
They said their lots were 50 foot, right?
Oh, there are some at 45. Matt Haley corrected me on that.
Oh, there are some.
Yeah, within the next phase, it's already had a preliminary plat. There are some 45-foot lots.
And so this would change, and the front yard minimum required on this is 25 feet, which is more than any other existing, more than any of our other residentials. So I think going down to the 15 would match our other residentials. The rear yard of 10 feet, if they back up to natural area or open space, shouldn't be a big deal. I really think it's just the side yard that's the lot size, the lot width, which we've talked about, and then the side yard would be the main one. The front yard of 15, the corner yard of 10 are much more consistent with our other residential zonings.
All right. Well,
Any further?
Yeah, I guess just one last comment. And I think Matt alluded to it a little bit. This is Patrick with DR Horton. We currently have homes that are in progress that we had approved building permits on, and the front yard setback right now is at 12 with the 5 yard side setbacks. I don't know the specifics on how far those side setbacks are currently off the plans that we have, but is this something, and this might not be the right question, will we be able to continue going forward with those, or we have to consider, bulldozing a house that has a foundation, plumbing, and is framed or in the process of framing?
So you're saying the front yard it's not 15 feet? You said it's 12.5 feet?
Yeah, the original preliminary plat had the 10-foot front setback. So what we're actually proposing as part of the text amendment is increasing that from 10 to 15, recognizing that there's some concerns with that small of a front setback and parking and not blocking sidewalks. But there are a handful of homes where the plans were submitted and building permits were issued and construction started utilizing that 10-foot front setback requirement. Now, the actual setback may be more in the lines of 12, 13 feet based on the way the house was positioned on the lot.
So those initial permits were issued off, and in DR Horton's defense, I looked at what was on the plan and I issued them based off of that. And when I started reading through the actual ordinance, I called Kyle and said, Kyle, I don't think this matches what was done. And then that's where the conversation started of, do we need to update this? What do we need to do? Because what is out there does not match the way that this is currently worded. But the initial ones were issued by myself based off of the preliminary plat and not having read through this well enough. Or the final plat.
And I think that with a 15-foot front setback, as was presented in the proposed text amendment, understanding there's some other language that is maybe a little bit more contested. With a 15-foot front setback and maybe some revisions to the existing right-of-way, I think we can retroactively make those lots comply with the 15-foot front setback.
And that's where we had talked about possibly having, instead of having dedicated right-of-way, having a larger utility easement, which is something that I would need to follow up with David Price on, just to get his feelings on that, since he's the one that'll be in there maintaining that sewer and water infrastructure in the future. That is definitely something we had discussed, the possibility of narrowing the right-of-way and making that an easement instead of a right-of-way.
Amy, if I could just chime in about the maintenance, standard practices, whatever the depth of that sewer line is, we need 1.5 times that depth. That's how we set our easements. So just keep that in mind as we go forward.
All right. What about
and I
the
think
water
that was
lines,
just
David? What's your rule of thumb for those?
I'm sorry, I didn't get a question.
1.5 times the depth.
1.5.
What's your rule of thumb for the water line maintenance? Is that 1.5 times the depth also?
Yeah, if it's buried to the minimum 30 to 36 inches, it's saying 1.5 times depth.
All right. Well, we will definitely do a little more digging on that. Just make sure that the line of thought would still preserve those 1.5 times the depth maintenance requirements.
I think right now it's just a standard 10-foot.
Yeah, we'll do a little bit of digging on that. We've got the as-built to the sewer and the water and how deep they're installed relative to the edge of the proposed easement. So yeah, we're kind of looking at this. We've got two things that we need to accomplish, you know, in relatively short order. Is we've got a lot of homes, you know, planned, a lot of, you know, lot sites that have been recorded, and D.R. Horton's ready to start building. That we need to get good clarification on the setbacks. And then we've got, you know, a handful of homes, maybe 4 to 6, that are under construction that we need to retroactively figure out a way to make whole, whether that's through, you know, adjusting some right-of-ways, adding some utility easements, et cetera. So I think we've got our work cut out to work with Amy on getting some more information together in terms of those previous approvals and the timeline, so that we can present the whole picture and hopefully work together on a solution that keeps the project moving and is good for the developer as well as the town.
And Patrick, one of the things that Michael and I had talked about as well, if we narrow any right-of-ways, the planting strip out there is 8 foot wide, which I feel is appropriate for larger trees. Maybe researching that a little bit from an arborist standpoint of whether or not that could be shrunk by a foot to help in that right-of-way.
Yeah, I can definitely, we have a few different arborists that we've worked with, and obviously I'm sure you guys might want your own opinion as well, but I could definitely, you know, we could definitely get an arborist to either write us a summary on that or, you know, be involved in the discussion.
Sounds like, I just know that was one of the things when we were talking about minimizing the right-of-way width and adding utility easement, it could possibly shift the sidewalk. And I want to make sure that we're allowing room for those trees to grow in a way that the roots don't mess up sidewalk and asphalt within a very short period of time.
Understood.
Okay, I think we've seen the need for more information. We have a motion to table this item until more information is given to us. We have a second. All in favor of tabling the item, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed to tabling the item? So the motion carries to table that until more information is given to us. A lot of discussion there. Amy, do you have any updates for us?
Do I have any dates for what, sir? Sorry.
Do you have updates on anything that we need to know about her?
You know, other than building houses, we've been pretty quiet lately. We're still waiting. Burrito Shack has not paid for their permit, so that's kind of on pause right now. Jersey Mike's has submitted their sign permit and gotten that approved, so it seems like they'll be doing some work. The Brass Pelican at the north end of town is just basically doing a remodel and freshening up. They are not doing the triple deck that they had originally submitted, nor the extension of the building, so that'll be remaining the same. We've been working with Waterside with houses. Magnolia Reserve has contacted me with questions, so I anticipate within the next few weeks we'll start receiving permit requests for those first 20 lots, and they've also they're also working towards getting the next 25 lots with a final plat approval, and that out there is R10 residential in Magnolia Reserve. Other than that, we haven't had much commercial stuff come in lately. So, Steve, you have anything? Steve says he's good. He doesn't have anything.
Amy, has the council moved forward with the comprehensive plan process?
You kind of cut out. Can you repeat your question, please?
Has the council moved forward with the comprehensive planning process with the COG?
So right now, the COG is working on our 160D update as required by the legislation. They are on track to meet the extended deadline. We also have requested in my budget this year for the first year's funding, or really the first 2/3 to 3/4 of the funding for the comp plan. I have not received any questions on that yet, but it has not been adopted. But we are requesting funds for the comp plan. We're requesting a very small, it's about $1,500, I believe, for the East Coast Greenway plan to be a partner in that. We are also, from the planning side, requesting funds for a pavement condition survey, which we would utilize to determine, one, what our resurfacing program would look like, as far as what order those roads would need to be resurfaced in, and also what the existing structural integrity is, so that we can determine the type of resurfacing, repair, restoration, what they actually need, so that we have some geotech to back it up, to make sure that we're making the right selections when we decide on how to do that moving forward. And then we'll also, the bicycle and pedestrian plan that was created a few years ago, we are looking at incorporating that into the CIP over the next few years and trying to knock some of those goals out. So that's kind of our all-around plan update.
Okay, thank you for the updates. Any further discussion? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
I make a
moved.
motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you,
Bye.
Larry.